like we are live.
Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started after everyone's ready. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of City Council on Monday, June 15th. Thanks everyone for joining us. Going to move into item A, call to order and announce a quorum is present. Quorum is present, Madam Secretary.
Yes.
Okay. Going to move into item B, invocation and pledge of allegiance by Councilmember Drew Wasson.
Thank you, Andrew. I invite you to join me for our invocation as your tradition allows. Almighty God, there's so much for which we are grateful. Thank you for the people and environment that make our community of Jersey Village. We give thanks for our diligent city staff and brave first responders who serve to support our residents. And we're ever thankful for our health and well-being during these extraordinary times. We ask that you help us bridge the divides in our world, nation, and community through understanding and respect. There's so much more that unites us than separates us. God, we ask that you bless our first responders, health co-workers, and all the men and women who are in defense of our freedoms and our health and safety abroad and at home. We ask that you continue to inspire us to be great, do great things, and serve greatly. God, please may you help this council, city staff, and all of our civic leaders make wise decisions. Please grant us the strength to do what is right, not just what is easy. And help us be constantly mindful of those in the community for which we serve. Please continue to bless Jersey Village and this great state of Texas, and continue to bless America. Amen.
Amen.
Oh,
Awesome. Don't you go ahead and get the
Flag.
flag going there. There we go. All right.
there we go. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and
and
to
the
the
United States
republic
of America
for which it stands,
and to the republic for which it
one
stands,
nation,
indivisible.
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Drew. That was a great blessing. Thank you so much. Okay, going to move on into item C, citizen comments. Any person who desires to address City Council regarding an item on the agenda will be heard at this time in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, unless the subject matter of the comment is on the agenda. City staff and council members are not allowed to discuss the subject. Each person is limited to 5 minutes for comments to the City Council. Madam Secretary, the first attendant we have will call Mr. David Bellato.
Yes, this is David Bellato. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay. So I live at 8301 Rio Grande Street, and I'd like to present an issue that has come up concerning Code of Ordinance Section 1488A2. I will read this in a few minutes. First, I'd like to say we've lived in this house for 21 years, or almost 21 years. It'll be 21 in August. We have not modified our driveway in any way, or changed or remodeled to change the purpose of our garage in any way. This is the first time living here almost 21 years that we've received a notice for this violation. So second, I'd like to say my family feels we are being singled out and someone is using the city to discriminate against us. Since my house has been reported for this violation, I've talked with 2 city employees who told me they were under the impression that houses on the corner with driveways like ours were grandfathered in. Anyone who would have came to check on this driving from the city would have noticed several houses with driveways with cars blocking as they drove down Rio Grande Street. And when they got to our house, they would notice that our neighbors with the same sidewalk that you would have to walk by to get to our house also has cars blocking the driveway. So whoever reported us is, again, picking on us and not reporting the issue. And the city who came out, if anyone came to check it, would have also noticed the neighbor's car in the driveway since it's right next door to ours. I was also told that this is only going to be enforced when reported. So this allows someone who has a grievance to watch a single house for a violation and only report that house. This way, the city only enforces the codes on this house and this family. When you drive around Jersey Village, you can definitely see this is not being enforced universally to everybody, but yet it was decided to send a letter to us. My house was built with a driveway designed to park cars in it across the sidewalk. It was like that when we moved here, and you can see if you come by the house that there is 4 wheel stops, these concrete curbs built in with rebar into the driveway. These were here when we moved here, and if you pull up to those curbs, those wheel stops, your car will be across the sidewalk. So the house and driveway were built with this purpose. The house was built in the mid-'80s, and my understanding, talking to the code enforcement, that this went into place in '95. So therefore, I feel like we should be grandfathered in. And at least a couple of people in the city felt that way too, since they thought we were grandfathered in. So let me read this code now. So this code regulates section 1488, regulation that applies to all districts. General regulations. 2, no use of public street, right-of-way, or public sidewalk or adjacent property, either private or public, shall be permitted if that use inhibits or hinders the move of normal traffic on the street or sidewalk. If you're going to enforce this code, wouldn't you say that parking on the street is more of a violation than parking in a driveway that blocks the sidewalk? People that walk on the sidewalk can walk around a car. They can always walk around a car. If you're parked in the street, cars still have to, it still hinders the movement. They have to drive around, sometimes going into the opposite lane of traffic to get around. If cars are coming in both directions, it actually could inhibit and temporarily inhibit and not allow cars to drive by at that moment in time. So therefore, you're not only hindering, but you're inhibiting the traffic on the street by parking in the street. So now if I go by this code, now I can't park on the street and I can't park in my driveway. So I don't think that's the intention of this. Next, I've also heard that this is a safety issue because you have to walk around the car if they're parked on the sidewalk. Well, wouldn't it be the same safety issue if I was parked 6 inches in front of the sidewalk? And there are several houses that you see with cars parked right in front of the sidewalk, where if they back up, you would have just as much reaction time walking behind a car on the sidewalk, or walking behind a car that's parked on the sidewalk, as you would walking behind a car that's parked 6 inches in front of it. I've also heard that a driveway is built as a means for your car to get to your garage. In this case, we have 4 wheel stops that were built with the house and the driveway when we moved in. And therefore, there's no way you could pull, if someone decided to build a driveway, you're gonna have to tear up or build a garage to park 5, 6 cars. You're gonna have to tear out those wheel stops and tear up the driveway. I sent the city council members and the city secretary an email with pictures of my driveway showing these wheel stops. It also shows where the sidewalk goes through our driveway and a picture looking down that sidewalk where you can see our neighbor's car. I also took a picture that we drove around one afternoon just on Senate Street and west of Senate, and I believe we counted 45 driveways where vehicles were blocking the sidewalk. Those pictures and addresses are included in the email that I sent. I'm sure there are more. We went in the early afternoon, and like I said, we only went on the west side, down Senate and the west side. So apparently, since we're not grandfathered in, I just bring this question: what am I supposed to do? If I want to try and oblige by these new rules, I basically have to build a new driveway, which would cause me to tear down buildings or cut down large trees. And how do I know that since we weren't grandfathered in, that the codes won't change and you won't grandfather us in again, and I spend all this money for nothing? I would like to note that we are also limited to leaving our vehicles parked on the street, if it's allowed to be parked on the street under this code, for 24 hours. This means if I have to go outside every day and move my car 3 inches, which is kind of silly. But the big thing there is if I go on vacation with my family or I leave for a weekend, I have no place to park my cars in my house. I can't leave them on the street. I can't park them on the driveway. So I'm left having to find somebody that allow me to leave my cars at their house, or I'm going to have to rent a storage place to go out of town on the weekend to leave my cars. I would like y'all to consider changing this code or enforcing it the way it's been enforced for 20 plus years that I lived here, where people considered us grandfathered in.
Thank you, Mr. Bellato. Appreciate your comments.
Mr. Bellato, you mentioned emailing all of City Council. Could you let me know what day you did that. I don't have any emails from you on this matter. Or I can reach out to you after this meeting.
I believe I sent it.
Councilmember Singleton, I have that. I can send that to you.
Okay, yeah, I also copied Lori on.
Sent on Sunday, James.
Okay, I did not receive. I just searched through all of my emails. I did not receive email. Okay.
I clicked on the link to use everybody's email from the website, so I don't know, maybe I just deleted yours accidentally or I missed yours somehow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, next person to comment, Mark Malloy, please.
Past city. Hi, my name's Mark Malloy. I live at 7803 Hamilton Circle, past city council member of the city of Jersey Village, Texas. Citizens' comments for the 06/15/2020 city council meeting. Please make my verbal comments and documents given to the city secretary a permanent record of this meeting. I am talking to the Jersey Village city government and city management over the phone tonight due to the coronavirus pandemic situation. I'm going to talk about regular session agenda item number 5, which is dealing with the treated wastewater supplemental irrigation system project, gray water project for the Jersey Village municipal operated golf course. The information written for the description is consider resolution number 2020-27, rejecting all bids for the gray water project, Harry Ward, Public Works Director. The city government had estimated this project would cost $750,000, and by doing the project, it would reduce the cost of irrigating the golf course, and the project would pay for itself in an estimated 5 to 6 years. The city government has received the contractor project bids to do the project, and they are extremely over the city's original estimate. The bids are from the lowest $1,467,046.90 to the highest bid of $2,003,986.66. Based on information within this agenda item, the city staff and engineer are recommending to the city government that they should reject all bids for this project. Even using the lowest bid for the project cost, it is estimated the project would have a 22.6-year payback. I think the city government should take the city staff and engineers' advice and reject all bids. The second agenda item I'm going to talk about is regular agenda item number 6, which has been asked to be placed on the regular agenda to be discussed by the city's mayor. The mayor, from what I have read through his postings on Nextdoor, is wanting to allow golf carts to be able to be driven on public roadways within the city of Jersey Village. When I read his postings, I decided to go to the Texas Highway Patrol office at the Department of Transportation facility and talked to one of the officers about the mayor wanting to allow golf carts to be operated on public roadways. The officer first asked me if it was a gated community, and I answered no. The officer then said, in their opinion, it would not be a good idea, and also said it will create a traffic hazard for the motorists that utilize the roadways in the area. The officer also felt from prior experience that whatever rules the city government put in place involving golf carts being allowed to operate on public roadways would most likely not be enforced. I think the city government should take the advice of the Texas Highway Patrol officer and not allow golf carts to be operated on public roadways within the city of Jersey Village, Texas. I also see that the golf course fund balance for the 2019-2020 financial year is showing to be a negative $172,365.81 as of the period ending May 31st, 2020. And that total revenue year to date, actual revenue is $969,976.34, and year-to-date total expenditures are $1,142,342.15. The total negative fund balance for the golf course from its purchase by the city government to as of June 31st, 2020 is $4,643,502.37. The Jersey Village Municipal Golf Course should be paying for all of its costs to continue existing. The Jersey Village taxpayers should not be being forced by their city government to subsidize a money-losing, governmentally owned business. So thank you for my time being able to speak, and that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Mark. Next person I have signed up to speak is Phyllis Camarada.
Yes, hi. My name is Phyllis Camarada, and I live at 8314 Ottgill Street. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I want to address the issue of public sidewalks being permanently blocked by residents claiming to have been grandfathered. And I'm not talking about people who occasionally block the sidewalk with a vehicle. We have encountered homeowners that permanently block sidewalks by parking 4 and 5 large, oversized vehicles side by side, creating a parking lot out of their driveway and the public sidewalk. This forces us to walk behind the vehicles just inches from the back bumpers, or sometimes into the street, depending upon how far up the cars were parked that day. From what I understand, they're claiming that they have been grandfathered by the City of Jersey Village. We've looked into the city ordinance, Section 1488, Regulation A, number 2, and there appears to be no evidence of a variance in the code. I'm calling today to confirm that the City of Jersey Village has not given residents who are supposedly grandfathered the right to take over the public sidewalks while not using their garages for even one single vehicle. I refuse to believe that the city would give their blessing and allow these grandfathered residents to create such a hazard for pedestrians and take on this liability, not to mention violation of ADA laws. When we built our home in Jersey Village 30 years ago, homes were built with at least 2-car garages, and we paid for public sidewalks to be installed for public safety. We're now in our 60s, and we keep active by walking every day, walking our dog and our small grandchildren who frequently stay with us. We don't think that we should have to walk behind groups of large parked vehicles or in busy streets because someone else chose to use their garage for storage space or a pool house or extra living space. There would be no need for grandfathering if residents would clean out their 2-car garages, convert them back into garages, make modifications to garages to accommodate oversized vehicles, or even install a second driveway, like a circular driveway in front of their home, as many JV residents have. There are solutions to the problem of blocking public sidewalks, but they do require that the homeowner take some responsibility. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, is there anyone signed up to speak?
No, that's it.
Thank you very much for your comments. Going to move into, where am I? Citizen comments. Going to move into item D, City Manager Report. Austin, any council members have any comments or questions of Austin on this report?
I do.
Go ahead, Gary.
First off, a comment that May's report on the golf course was just incredible. That's of course, when you have 4,000 rounds, you're going to get a lot more sales of at the concessions and in the pro shop, and also with the range ball. So it all went together, but that's unbelievable.
Yeah, it was a great month.
The golf course is looking really good. It's really come around. The other, I have some questions, and I guess this might involve police chief, but considering what's going on in our country, in the last few weeks. I'm just wondering what discussions you and the police chief have had in regards to any changes in policies or changes in training. First off, well, here's the question. Do you think what happened with George Floyd was the correct way for the police to handle the situation?
The situation in Minneapolis is definitely unfortunate. It was not handled the way it should have been. The police department trains in de-escalation annually, I believe. Chief can correct me if I'm wrong. But there's certain policies and procedures in place to make sure that, and training that happens on a regular basis in our department to make sure that something like that doesn't happen.
Now, I'm in no way accusing anybody of anything. I don't want anybody to get defensive here. As a fire department member, I'm out there with the police on various calls, and I've got nothing but good things to say about our police force. I just know that a lot of these incidents can be directly traced back to the training that the police have had. The use of force, use of deadly force. And that's what I'm wondering is what discussions y'all have had, hoping that you've had some.
Councilman, Mayor, or Mayor Council, yes, we've had discussions, and also that is not a technique that would be used at our department. We do have de-escalation training. It's mandated now by TCOL, and we also are going through the use of force policy. We have a response to resistant policy that I've already implemented a form actually anytime it's used. I brought that to the agency, and currently we're reviewing all our general orders and looking at our use of force. But we do training that is not, we have our taser, we have pepper spray, and we have other ways to try and, if we have to go hands-on, but that would not be a technique that would be utilized by anyone in the Jersey Village Police Department.
Hey, Gary, on another note, I serve as a citizen, I'm not sure what the designation is, but a citizen advisory board to the police department on training. And we meet once a year or sometimes more often, but I can tell you that the police department has been very diligent in making sure that all the officers have the required amount of training in the proper fields according to their accreditation. So I know that as of our last meeting, they were very diligent in making sure that the training is done. Now, of course, there could be a change in direction or enhancements in certain other fields, but over the last couple of years, I've been very impressed on how diligent they've been. That's on a side note.
And just so you all know that anytime we do our firearms training, which we're going to start having more firearms training, that's when we also go over our use of force policy.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any questions for Austin?
Somebody had mentioned that de-escalation training happened annually. That's also included in part of the new officers field training program, correct? And okay, I see the chief nodding his head. The second question is, Texas Police Chiefs Association has a best practices accreditation program. Have we started looking at that? I know the chief is new and there's a lot going on, but if more departments would get on that program, a lot of these problems would resolve themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm excited to say that Chief Riggs has implemented that here. We've started that process of going through all of the policies, and we just got a grant from TML to cover the first year expenses and getting through that accreditation process. So Chief Riggs has hit the ground running and doing a fantastic job with that.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
I just had a question, Austin. I know you sent us an email about where we stand on revenue so far for the year. And you know, that email was sent to myself and council members, but maybe for the general public, maybe you can make some comments on where we stand for sales tax revenue given the pandemic that's going on right now.
Yeah, so our sales tax revenue that we received in June, which would have been for April when it was collected at point of sale in April, was pretty good. Slightly below last year, but last year I believe we had the Argus situation where we got a large amount then. So naturally it's going to be lower than last year. So it's we're still on target to meet or exceed. I'm thinking we'll probably exceed our budgeted amount for sales tax for this year. The sales tax numbers overall are good, within a couple of percentage points of where we were kind of hoping we would be, which is really good. Nothing like some cities that are 10, 15, 20% off of where they're at. We're within that 1 or 2%.
Okay. Any other revenue concerns? I know the golf course was closed for a month. Police officers weren't pulling over people as often as they normally do, so our fines are probably down. Are there any? How much revenue loss are you predicting? I know it's kind of early in the crystal ball, but
yeah.
What do you feel in your gut when we talk about the end of this year? Where will we be short?
Yeah, so we're going to be short in a few areas from where we budgeted. Interest is going to be one of them. Interest rates have certainly decreased quite a bit. The fines and warrants are going to be down a little bit. Building permits are going to also be down slightly. I think we've got a potential, like I said, to exceed the budget amount for sales tax. Right now, I'm estimating that we'll be probably within about 1% or so of our total revenue budget, which would be about $250,000, give or take a little bit. And that could all change, obviously, depending upon the next few months. But that's kind of where we're at now. I'm feeling okay with the budget. The things that we've put into place, the hiring freeze, and delaying some of the capital projects. If the revenue shortfall is greater than that, we've already taken steps to mitigate that. So overall, I think revenues will exceed expenditures for this fiscal year. Exact dollar amounts, I don't know, but revenues should exceed expenditures.
Great. Any other questions for Austin? All right, let's move on to the item E, consent agenda. Is there any item on the consent agenda that a council member would like to see moved to the regular agenda? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion on the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, Gary made the motion. James Singleton was the second. I'll have to do a roll call vote considering we're using Zoom. So let's see. All right, there we go. Councilmember Wasson, state your vote.
You're muted.
No, I'm not muted. Yay.
Okay. Councilmember Holden, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Warren, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wobenhorst, state your vote.
Aye.
All right. Motion passes. Move on to item F, regular session. Item number 1, consider resolution number 2020-24, electing a mayor pro tem. Let me pull that up real quick. Currently, we have some guy by the name of Bobby Warren. Looking for a motion with a candidate for mayor pro tem for this upcoming year.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to nominate Bobby Warren to continue in that position.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, I'm going to roll call vote again. Councilmember Holden, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wasson, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wobenhorst, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Warren, state your vote.
I'm abstaining.
All right. Motion passes. Congratulations. All right, going to move on to item number 2, consider resolution number 2020-25, assigning council members to serve as liaison to various city committees and boards. I have right now, it looks like our assignments are Councilmember Wasson is assigned to Planning and Zoning Commission and Capital Improvements Advisory Committee. Councilmember Holden is assigned to Building Board of Adjustments and Appeals. Councilmember Singleton is assigned to Recs and Events. Councilmember Warren is assigned to Golf Course Committee and TERS Board Zone 2. And Gary Wobenhorst is assigned to Board of Adjustments. There's another committee that we have this year that needs a liaison, and that is the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee. I guess, does anybody have any reservations about the committees that they're assigned to? Would you like to stick with what you're on?
As far as I'm concerned, I think I'm fine where I am.
Okay. May I make a suggestion for Comprehensive Plan Update Committee? Are there any volunteers that would like to be assigned to it? Councilmember Watson, I see your hand raised. I see James Singleton also. Councilmember Watson, are you good with that assignment?
I'm fine. I think it falls in line with the other committees that I'm liaisoning for.
Great. Anybody have any other recommendations? All right, I'm looking for a motion to appoint council members to their to reappoint council members to their current liaison positions and also assign Councilmember Wasson to the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee.
And approve ordinance 2020-25 with those names.
Right.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2025 with the names as read and Drew Wasson to the Comprehensive Planning Committee.
Can the agenda says resolution number, not ordinance number.
I'm sorry, resolution.
Okay.
I amend my motion to resolution.
Roger that. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second the resolution.
Okay. A motion, a second. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, all those in favor. Oh, actually, sorry. Roll call vote. Can't wait to get out of this. Councilmember Wasson, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Holden, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Warren, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wobenhorst, state your vote.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Let's see. Move on to item number 3. Consider resolution number 2020-26, appointing an alternate committee member to the 2020 Comprehensive Plan Update Committee and reestablishing the position number of the 3 alternates serving on this committee. Lori Cootie, City Secretary.
Yes, Mayor. Shortly after the appointments were made for the Comp Plan Update Committee last month, Frank Marr sent in an email stating that he would like to resign. That left position A1 open. This item was set up so that council can appoint a member to that committee in the alternate position. And also, if council chooses, the ability is there to make reassignments of the alternate positions.
Okay, thank you. Let me pull this up real quick. So we have applicants Anthony Martin, Carrie Lawrence, and John Kenna. I believe Anthony Martin and Carrie Lawrence were included in the initial interview process, and Mr. Kenna is a recent application.
That is correct. Yes, that's correct.
Council members, if you've looked over the applications, I'm looking for recommendations on an appointment to as an alternate. And if we would like to, we can move the 2 current alternate members up to A1 and A2 and assign this new person as A3.
I'll put Carrie Lawrence's name forward.
Okay.
I recall we had this discussion in executive session. If I remember correctly, Anthony Martin was one that we strongly considered with Frank Marr, and I'm going to recommend Anthony Martin.
Yeah, I think just my 2 cents. We were trying to get a little more diverse group of people, and that was kind of the goal. So my recommendation would also be for Anthony Martin. Does anybody else
You
have any
remember
comments?
Certainly as part of the process, we were talking about diversity. We also wanted to have, obviously we didn't want to overwhelm the update committee with members who previously served, but we did also want to ensure that there was, I mean, I know that Jennifer McCrae was on the original comprehensive plan committee, but if I remember correctly, Frank Marr was the only other member from the committee. Is that correct? If Andrew or James can confirm that.
Let's see, Deborah Murgoy.
We can search that very quickly, but I believe that Carrie Lawrence was on the original.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that,
Frank, the only people as far as currently assigned as it stood last time we met was Jennifer McCrae and Frank Marr. Now Frank has withdrawn his position, and so if we would like to put another person that was on the previous commission on that board, we can do that. There's an advantage to that. And then there's also the question of, a little question of diversity a little bit.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the reason I brought that up is I do think that it's important to have, I mean, obviously you have a majority that is going to have a very fresh perspective on the plan and how to approach it. But I do think that Carrie Lawrence would bring a lot of that knowledge where you're not just relying on one person to know kind of how things were discussed. You do have some additional institutional knowledge in there that I think would be extremely important. I agree. You want a committee that is diverse and reflects the community at large. And I do think that Carrie would provide that along with that additional knowledge from the original process.
I would agree with Bobby. I think that legacy knowledge is important as you move forward, as well as the new people with different insights. But I would agree with that concept.
Okay, it looks like we have at least a majority of council members that are leaning towards Carrie Lawrence. What about the changing of position numbers? Is there anyone who wants to move Judy Tidwell and Gabriella Cole up to A1 and A2? Or
I think that they're both of them are very comparable, and it is a hard decision between the two of them. So by saying Anthony Martin, I was definitely not opposed to Carrie Lawrence. I would move them up, Judy Tidwell, and I'm sorry, but the other candidate up to A1, A2, and place Carrie Lawrence as number 3.
And these are, make sure, these are alternates. So the alternates will attend the meetings and participate, but not vote.
Right.
That's
right.
correct.
And unless there's a vacancy on, at that meeting where something is held, then the chairperson would call an alternate 1 or 2 or even 3 to take their positions for that meeting. But yes.
So excuse me, Mayor, the way it goes is the alternate 1 will be appointed first to fill somebody who's not there, then alternate 2. So the alternate 1 position is kind of an important position because if they are taking someone's place, they'd be the first to vote.
Understood. Yeah.
And Frank Marr was alternate 1?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Keeping in line with what I view as the priorities, and it's that legacy information, that institutional knowledge that Bobby talked about. I would prefer to have Carrie in that number 1 slot for all the reasons we talked about.
Yeah, I agree. Because at least for me in my mind, when we were talking about Frank Marr versus Carrie Lawrence, it was one or the other. And I think that they filled a similar role, and I think that she should occupy the same position he did.
Okay.
I'll be your third vote on that.
All right. Any other comments or questions, recommendations? Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve resolution number 2020-26 with Carrie Lawrence in position A1.
I move to approve resolution number 2020-26 with Carrie Lawrence as alternate 1.
Okay. I have a
Second.
motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I'll roll call vote. Councilmember Holden, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Warren, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wobenhorst, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wasson, state your vote.
Aye.
Motion passes. Go to item number 4. Consider ordinance number 2020-14, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 66, Traffic and Vehicles, Article 2, Parking, Division 2, by amending Section 66S71, no parking zones designated, providing a severability clause, providing for repeal, providing a penalty as provided in Section 1-8 of the code. Austin Blease, City Manager.
Mayor and councilors, currently there are no parking signs posted on the west side of Rio Grande from near Wyndham Parkway. However, there's no ordinance in place to enforce the no parking at that location. When that was brought to our attention, we discussed it with the Public Works Director, Police Chief, and Fire Chief. After talking about it, staff's recommending that we enact an ordinance for no parking on Rio Grande Drive from Wyndham Parkway to Kester. This will ensure the free flow of traffic, including emergency vehicles, and make sure that the signs that are there are enforceable. With more usage at the dog park, we're seeing a few vehicles parking on that side of the street, and that's where it came up, was vehicles being parked on that side of the street with no parking there. And taking it all the way down to Kester would mean that there's no parking there when it gets a little bit tight at the golf course at times. So making sure there's no cars parked on that side of the street there was the reasoning for bringing it that far down.
All right. Thank you, Austin. Any questions for Austin?
I have one. I know we have a no parking there, and I think that no parking signs were placed there at the request of a resident of Wyndham Village. My question is that the proper side of the street to have the no parking? It seems that people will park on one side of the street and then cross the street to go to the dog park. Do you think that is there a safety reason why we should move it to the other side of the street? Any thoughts? I've just a thought.
Yeah, we briefly talked about that, and I don't know if the fire chief would like to jump in on that one. I think it was a turning radius thing with the fire trucks coming out of Wyndham Village. If there were cars going to be parked right there, if I recall that conversation.
Okay, I could see that.
Having driven one, I would agree with that. That the dog park people hopefully are parking at the parking lot. Unfortunately, I agree. I've seen several cars parked there on Rio Grande.
Parking on Rio Grande has increased quite a bit since the dog park opened. And to really, Greg, when you get out of your vehicle, you're facing the flow of traffic going. I mean, your vehicle's pointed in the direction of traffic on your side. So whichever side it's on, you're going to open your door and get out into traffic.
Right.
So I don't really see it that it makes much difference. I mean, yeah, you're crossing the street, well, from one side, but people crossing the street are generally looking. It's when you get out of the vehicle that you're not looking.
Right. All right. Yeah, I don't have a problem either way. I just wanted to bring that up as a point of discussion to see if there was a strong opinion one way or the other.
Yeah, and honestly, I'll say, I know that this is just designed to kind of formalize in the Code of Ordinance what's there in terms of the signs. If there continues to be a problem with parking right there because of the dog park, I have no problem with putting no parking on both sides of the street, at least for that limited space. It's not in front of anyone's residence, so it's not really affecting their ability to have guests over or anything. And I know that was a concern expressed when the dog park was being put into place.
Hey, Austin, or just a quick question. I'm for this ordinance and think that we need to enforce the signs if we're going to keep them there. How does something like this happen though, where a sign goes up without an ordinance? And do we have a procedure now in place to prevent this from happening again?
I don't know the history of how it happened, but yeah, for us, when we look at where we need signs or whatever, we're going to make sure that either we can put one up in accordance with ordinances, or we make sure that the ordinance is modified so the sign we do put up is in accordance and is enforceable. But how it, to answer your question as to how it happened previously, I'm not sure.
Fair enough. Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'm looking for a motion on the ordinance.
I move that we approve ordinance 2002-14.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Warren, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Holden, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wobenhorst, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wasson, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton, state your vote.
Aye.
Motion passes. That'll move us into item number 5. Consider resolution number 2020-27, rejecting all bids for the Graywater project. Mr. Harry Ward, Public Works Director.
Yes.
All
Are there
right.
any questions or I think we just talked about it a few minutes ago. Those were the main reasons why it was recommended for rejection.
Okay. So it looks like the bids came in between 1.46 million and 2 million. Originally, we had budgeted $750,000 for this project. It's been we've discussed it over the last couple of years as a potential way to offset some of the expensive costs of pumping water to irrigate the golf course. Looks like the recommendation is to reject all the bids for this project. My question would be, Austin, Harry, is this something that we want to look at redesigning in the future and bringing it back up, or?
I think it's one of those things that we keep an eye on the pumpage fees that we're paying. Had we known that the estimate was going to be higher than the 750,000, had we known that before we got out to bid, we would not have recommended to go out. We would not have gone out to bid at that point. But we'll keep an eye on what we're paying for pumpage fees. If the project becomes cost effective at some point in the future, I think it's definitely something that we can keep on the table. We've got all the engineering and permitting work, and if we need to dust that off in 5 or 10 years, we can do so, and re-estimate it and see if it would make sense at that time.
Austin, is there a known cause of why the costs are so much higher now than what they were 4 years ago?
The engineer Frank Brooks didn't really give us any information as to why the costs would have gone from 750 to the 1.3 or so that he was estimating. So I don't have any good information for you tonight on that.
Austin, you do mention there is in the staff memo for this item discussion regarding the North Harris County Regional Water Authority and a program for credits for water reuse. Can you kind of, I tried to kind of wrap my head around how that worked from the memo, but I didn't quite catch whether that was part of the original plan or if that was a potential alternate to be able to recoup the cost of the program. Can you just kind of flesh that out?
Yeah, so I don't know if it was part of the original plan, but it's something that we've been made aware of. Harry did some great work on with the authority to see if they would give us credit so it'd be like a coupon essentially. So if we pumped $40,000 worth of gray water from the treatment plant to the golf course, they would give us $20,000 worth of credit on our pumpage bill at the golf course. At the golf course, as you can see in the budget there, we haven't spent a whole lot of money there. So we could take that down, eliminate the cost almost. But those credits are only as good as how much water you're pumping out. So you're not pumping water out, so you're getting a coupon for something that you're not going to buy anyway. So it makes it more difficult to justify it. It made sense. Previously, we thought in conversations, Harry and I thought that we could apply those to our groundwater pumpage that we use for city consumption, at your home or wherever. But we found out that was not the case. So at that point, it really took away the financial incentive to go with that.
Is there some other area where we are using gray water or that we could use gray water that we're currently not? In other words, part of the cost of the project is that you're having to carry water all the way from the water treatment plant to the golf course. Is there a way to reduce the project and still get those credits from the pumpage on the golf course by using the gray water elsewhere?
Potentially, perhaps. You'd have to find a use for the gray water, and you'd have to find that obviously closer to the wastewater treatment plant over there. The problem with that is you have to either find a place to put it, a pond or what have you, or a way to distribute that. So you'd need either, pipeline distribution system to distribute that to sprinkler systems or that type of thing to businesses or whatnot in that area. All that still comes with a cost, or you need to find a place to store it in places that could tap into it. So you could potentially use it, but the cost to do that, to build out that system, would still be fairly high, I would believe.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if we had, I didn't know if there was a significant amount of sprinkler usage because, presumably if there were sprinkler systems closer to the plant, if they were on a separate meter like they should be, then potentially that sounds like it would be a allowable use. But yeah, if it turns out to not be practical because of the way the infrastructure is set up, yeah, that doesn't really help.
You have separate meters there for irrigation, but it's all tapped into the same water lines. So you'd have to lay gray water lines and tap into that way.
Okay. Got it.
And that would be the expensive part.
Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
Mayor, I'd like to make a request.
Yes, sir.
Could we get the city staff to put together another cost benefit analysis with an estimated payback period using current numbers?
I thought there was.
About 22 years is what it would take right now.
At the bottom of that memo. At the bottom of the
memo.
Was
it in there?
Yeah, based on project costs, this project would have a 22.6 year payback.
They're only willing to reimburse us for 20 years.
Yeah.
Which means it would take longer than what they're willing to do.
And the reimbursement is really only for things that you're using, which conceivably we wouldn't be using very much at all. So we wouldn't really get reimbursed.
Did they say why it had to be the golf course specifically? I mean, it would seem to me that their goal is to reduce overall groundwater consumption. It doesn't seem like they would care which one it came from.
So they didn't, because the water is going to be used at the golf course and we have our own meter at the pump at the golf course, that's where the offset would be. If you're going to use it, like the idea you brought up of, lawn irrigations, you'd have all of those metered. And right now they're on the separate system. So it kind of goes by, I guess, pump or system that you're using it. Because the golf course irrigation is not tied into our commercial system, if you will.
Yeah.
That goes into the water tanks of the water treatment plants. We pump it out and we irrigate.
So they're looking at it on a meter by meter system, not an entity by entity system.
Right. The only way we could actually go for a bigger way of getting credits if we irrigated, everybody's lawns with it, we would have to be put in that whole new system of water, gray water pipes. And then you could legitimately at that point say we're offsetting our pumpage for consumption with the gray water, and they would look at it then. But the cost to put in that system, I'm assuming, would be quite high.
Okay.
All right. Any more discussion on the topic? And if not, looking for a motion on the resolution.
I move to approve resolution number 2020-27.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Warren, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Holden, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wobenhorst, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wasson, state your vote.
Aye.
Motion passes. We will move on to item number 6. Consider ordinance number 2020-15, amending chapter 66, traffic and vehicles of the Jersey Village Code of Ordinances by adopting a new article 6, regulation of golf carts. And that has my name on it. So let me pull that up. Little background on this. In 2019, the legislature passed HB 1548, which sort of helped establish the ability for municipalities to create regulations on golf cart usage. Prior to that, the language is very, very confusing. that doesn't authorize golf cart usage carte blanche, but it allows usage in gated communities. It allows usage for going to and from a golf course within 2 miles, and some other purposes, but mostly on streets with a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour or less. And in the sort of, as I read it, was in the absence of a municipal ordinance, those were really the only uses. Jersey Village, in my opinion, has a great layout for golf cart usage. I think golf carts are very convenient for our community. There's just some distances that are very difficult in the heat of summer to take a bike ride to, or walk. If you have someone in your family like myself who has a person with a physical handicap, golf carts can be very convenient for that person to go to the park, go to the golf course, go to the swimming pool without being impacted. I did my research on other municipalities who have enacted ordinances updated by HB 1548. A lot of it, for example, Seabrook, Jamaica Beach, Trophy Club, some other places that had some great rules. I kind of cherry picked what rules I think fit our city well. I also spoke with people who live in communities that are master planned and listened to their concerns about what they do right there and what they do wrong. Overwhelmingly, what people complain about the most with golf carts is, number one, driving on sidewalks, and number two, kids driving, people who aren't licensed. And so I made sure in my ordinance, draft ordinance, that the drivers must have a driver's license or a permit, and cart usage would be restricted to only driving on city streets with a posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour or less. I specifically exempted usage of golf carts on dangerous streets such as Jones Road, Eldridge Road, and West Road. You can cross those streets at an intersection, which is in compliance with the state law as well, but you're not allowed to drive on those streets. The other big concern that I made sure was just a basic understanding of the safety features on that golf cart. So having mirrors, having lights, having headlights. The golf cart cannot go faster than 25 miles per hour. And then also how to operate the golf cart. So you would yield, you're not allowed to overtake another vehicle in the same lane, and yielding the right of way to faster vehicles. No one, not allowing anyone to sit in the lap of any passenger or operator. Some things like that. The other component that I put in was whether to have a registration and permitting and inspection process or not. So I had two versions of the ordinance, one with that process and one without. So I'd like to know where council stands on that. And so, yeah, I'd like to open up the floor to discussion on this ordinance. Who wants to go first?
I'll start. Initially apprehensive for all the reasons that we talked about: safety, enforcement, children, those types of things. And the more I thought about it, the more public, excuse me, the more public input that was out there in social media. And I hate to use social media as a barometer, but it was overwhelmingly positive, which I found somewhat surprising. Let me start out by saying that there absolutely has to be a registration process, period. There has to be strict enforcement. I don't think the police have a tendency to give Jersey Village residents a break, but I think this has to go to the opposite end and say that if an ordinance like this is put in place, that the police must enforce it, because my biggest concern is the safety factor, it's a safety concern. What the other, my other comment is that I think we need, I kind of view this as an experiment. I'm not sure it's the right approach on an ordinance like this, is that I think it's worth a try. But if it doesn't work, if the cons outweigh the pros, how do we back up? How do we take it out once we put it in? And that's a point of discussion. So to kind of recap, if it's something we do, absolutely has to have registration, has to have strict enforcement, obviously liability. Andrew, I did call the other day, got a quote on auto, on liability coverage, et cetera, $121 a year.
Yeah.
So
My quote was like $20 a month. So
yeah. So again, registration, absolute, strict enforcement, some type of measurable enforcement matrix of some sort. Absolutely no children, licensed drivers, no sidewalks, everything that you have in your ordinance. The only other thing is nighttime. I know that some ordinances specifically excluded operating a golf cart on streets after sunset. So that might be a point of discussion as well. Sorry,
yeah,
Alexis.
just to go, yeah, I kind of, agree with the inspection process and the registration process, simply because it's a way to educate the person who has the golf cart. And because my biggest fear is, this has been out in public and people overwhelmingly seem to want to have this happen. And my concern is they're not all watching this discussion right now, and they're not going to read the ordinance, and they just hear, oh, golf carts are legal in the city now. And that's when we have all the problems. So the registration and inspection process makes sure that each person who owns a golf cart has this ordinance. They have to sign and understand what our rules are, what we're allowing, what's restricted. And also it enforces the insurance requirement, because with your insurance policy, at least on mine, it can only be for licensed drivers. So that's another point. I want to make sure that people, if everyone's filtered through this process, there's less likelihood that someone's not going to know the rules. And one thing I forgot to mention too is, I think it would be wise, if this ordinance does pass, is to include just a quick bullet point, what the ordinance is, what the rules are in maybe the city water bills for the first 1, 2, or 3 months. Just a simple addition to the mayor's newsletter, and just say they're allowed, but here's what you have to do. Here's the process. Here's the fees. Here's what's required. Here's what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do. And I've seen a lot of cities do that. They've put out a quick Q&A on how to use the golf carts properly in their cities. So I'd recommend that as well. As far as my opinion on nighttime usage, golf carts have taillights and golf carts have headlights. I think a lot of those, I noticed a lot of the cities that had the nighttime restrictions were beach communities or rural communities that may not have had as safe a wide streets as we have, as well as the street lights. So for my personal safety, I would not have a problem allowing operation at night, as long as, of course, the vehicles do have the proper slow moving vehicle signs, which are reflective. The lights on both the tail lights and the headlights, I don't really see a problem with that.
I will say this, I was a fan of this from the get-go. I don't know that we would necessarily go out and buy a golf cart. There may be a lot of people who like the idea of it and won't necessarily go out right away and go buy a golf cart. So I suspect we'll see a pretty slow adoption of this. I'm always hesitant to do registration or permitting or anything like that unless we have a really compelling reason to do so. The immediate thing that came to mind is there's a lot of people running around with bicycles. And as far as I know, there's no permitting process for the bicycle. Someone can hit someone else. Someone can get hit by a car, hit a car. I mean, I'm not saying it's the exact same danger or problems, but it's pretty close, and we don't require permitting or inspection for bicycles. I think for vehicles, it's a little different because they tend to, well, number one, they're a heck of a lot heavier. Evidence has shown that they do a heck of a lot more damage than golf carts do. But I personally think a golf cart's probably closer to a bicycle than a car in that regard. As far as enforcement, I think the golf cart, the requirements we have in the ordinance, it doesn't require you getting in there and inspecting to ensure that, the brakes are working, that they're, following emission standards or anything like that, like you would do with a motor vehicle. Most of the requirements under the ordinance and under state law are requirements that a patrol officer is going to be able to see right off the bat. Are they wearing their seatbelt? Do they have the lights that they're required to have? Are they, driving around in an unsafe manner? Or is it a 12-year-old in that golf cart? It would be a lot easier to tell that it's a 12-year-old in a golf cart than it would be in a motor vehicle, presumably. I hesitate to jump right to the registration and permitting process without a really compelling reason, and maybe even try it without it first, see if we run into problems, and then if we do, then tackle it when it's a problem.
That's true. I mean, there is the ability to add the permitting and inspection, like Greg kind of said, is maybe a little more of an experiment to allow it, and if it does become a problem, then it can become an issue with we can a future council probably would say, okay, if this is a problem, we need to implement an inspection and registration process, just like we do dogs and cats with vaccines and everything. I'm sure Jersey Village didn't have that at the very beginning, but now you must register your dog and cat with the vaccines and all that. So my concern, I personally like the permit and inspection process simply because I do want the residents that are going to choose to use a golf cart to know what the rules are. But if there's a way, like I said, putting a letter in the water bills for a couple of months, and periodically throughout the year, like at the beginning of spring when people would likely use their golf carts more, using social media to make sure people know the rules. I think that we may want to opt to not do the inspection and registration process at the very beginning and simply add it on later. Any other comments?
Yeah, does any of our
registration program with it, I'm against registration and permitting very strongly. I agree with Bobby that there's not a proven need for it yet. That should only be used when we have a problem and concern that we can show. And we need to go back and remember this ordinance is not authorizing golf carts in Jersey Village. You can get a golf cart right now and drive over to the golf course from your house. There's nothing illegal about that. You can throw some golf clubs in the back of that golf cart, take it over to the Exxon, and then swing by the golf course on your way. There's nothing illegal about that. UPS has been driving golf carts in our city for several years. There's several residents who said that they have golf carts already and drive them out on the street in Jersey Village today. This ordinance is not authorizing golf carts. It's formalizing a process and allowing them to be driven to destinations other than the golf course itself. As far as enforcement, we have step funds in the police department budget that can be used for enforcing impaired driving, occupant protections, speed laws, intersection traffic control, and distracted driving. That can all be used for golf cart enforcement if we have a problem. And that means you're putting officers on overtime with the specific goal of reducing golf cart violations. So I don't think that permitting and regulating golf carts is really where we need to go with this. My belief in limited government, I would vote no against that ordinance. And I think we should have golf carts in the city.
I mean,
I've got some other concerns, but let's keep having this conversation.
Well, my focus is safety. And to be honest with you, I don't trust the average person to make sure that their golf cart is properly equipped with all the safety equipment that's required or necessary to provide to operate on the street. I want some assurance that the golf cart that that Joe Blow picked up down on the corner is equipped with all the safety equipment it needs. Not only for their safety, but for mine. If I'm driving down the street and it doesn't have the proper headlights, the proper taillights, the proper signage, and I'm involved in an accident, whose fault does that become?
Well, who's doing that? Who's doing that inspection?
The police department. Somebody or whomever. I really don't care. My point is that if you're going to pass an ordinance, this is out of the ordinary. This isn't bicycles. This isn't cars. This is something that's very unique. And to just allow people to do whatever without some assurances that they're following the rules and are aware of the rules, I think it's just too unique and too different to leave to the general population to do whatever they want and to assume that they know the rules.
We're not allowing them to do whatever they want. There's one of the thickest transportation codes in the entire nation, the Texas Transportation Code of Rules they have to follow that are enforced by the police department.
Which I've never read.
Well, then you're driving a vehicle and regulated by a bunch of laws you've never read.
I mean, Greg, should you have to take a driving test every year to make sure you keep up on that transportation code?
No, but I get my motorhome inspected. I get my car inspected. I get you have a motorcycle, it gets inspected. Most engine or I don't know what the terminology would be, but I think anything besides a bicycle is typically inspected. Am I wrong or am I right? A bicycle is not inspected. A motorcycle is, a car is, a motorhome is, a trailer is.
Is a moped required to be inspected?
Has a license.
A moped? I know it has a license, and so will golf carts. State law requires a license for the golf cart, but that's for identification purposes. Does a moped require a inspection?
No, moped does not require inspection. It does require registration.
Okay, so I drop my bicycle analogy and I adopt the moped analogy because that's pretty close. If you've seen like a Honda Rascal, the thing weighs probably about the same as a golf cart or pretty close. It can go faster than a golf cart, and yet I don't have to have any particular kind of license other than driver's license, and I can go 35 miles per hour down the street. And guess what? If I hit you with a moped, that's going to damage you or your property about as badly as a golf cart.
Right. And so one thing I want to add, just from the state law that was passed, it does define what a golf cart is and what the minimum requirements are for a golf cart operated on public streets. And it does require, so this is state law, not even our ordinance. Our ordinance is sort of reinforcing, and it's going above and beyond what state law is saying. But state law does require, if it's going to be operated on public streets, that it does require. Let me pull that up real quick. But there's lights, mirrors, parking brake. You do have to have minimum insurance that the state requires for all vehicles. So a lot of the things that we're talking about are already enforceable by state law. Our ordinance reinforces that so that our police officers know a little more about what our ordinance is. It's easier to find, but we do go above and beyond. So I think state law also requires a slow moving vehicle emblem, which is a big triangle that's reflective that goes on the back. But let me see if I can find it. If y'all want to continue discussing.
While you're looking for that, can I ask for any opinions or expertise from our city staff, Justin or the chiefs? Don't be shy.
Well, so
I think you should ask them a specific question.
So Justin here. So that
I think asking for an opinion is a specific question.
Let Justin speak for a minute. Let's hear from our city attorney.
Yeah. So Austin sent me these ordinances, I think early this week or last week. Looked at them over the weekend. We did the same thing in Lubbock a few years ago, and this is before this version of state law came through. At that time, what really promulgated us looking at that there was because UPS wanted to have the city work with it and FedEx to have golf cart delivery during the holidays. And the city of Lubbock had no ordinance at all in place for any kind of golf cart. So the main issues I think that are addressed and what the mayor's provided for you are what we dealt with then. Are, does the driver have to have a license? And at the time that we did ours, there was no state law guidance. Really, it was still unclear. So, but because the city will say that you do, you can put it in there. Another thing, another issue that we had was somebody mentioned driving at night, putting time limits on it. And again, at the time, again, this is a new state law that clearly puts what can be on or off these golf carts. So we, at the city of Lubbock, we were going to put all the same safety equipment that's now included in the state law on them. The only thing that I would say from the mayor's version is that the new state law defines what a golf cart is. It's really broad. It just says it's any vehicle that's, I think, designed to be on a golf course or by a manufacturer to be on a golf course. What I would do in the mayor's version that's out, if you want those things to go less than 25 miles an hour, I would make that part of the ordinance, like a rule inside the ordinance. I wouldn't make it a definition, a part of the golf cart definition, just because there may be some golf carts that are designed to go more than 25 miles an hour. And if it's true that some folks in Jersey Village already have golf carts that can go faster than that, the way I read what's written now, those, you couldn't operate those on the streets because they're designed to go faster than 25 miles an hour.
So Justin, are you suggesting they have a governor on them? We make that a part of the rule, or?
No, I don't think governor. I think the way it's written now, like that, and I know the mayor pieced this together for several different ordinances from different cities. My suggestion would be just copy what the state, since most of this ordinance is the state's anyway, I would just copy the definition of golf cart from the state ordinance. And then I would put inside the text of the ordinance is one of the regulations is that they just can't go faster than 25 miles an hour. And that could be, again, a police enforced thing. They could, speed check those deals. So if you have, if somebody that, assume they're a licensed driver that's in this thing, they want to go for a joyride and start speeding down the street. I mean, they're already in violation of the law that way because you've stated that speed limit for them is 25 miles an hour. But other than that, I think it's solid. And like the mayor said, it does follow almost verbatim what's written in the state code already. You're just allowing them and you're broadening out the state law. The state law prohibits these things on certain municipal what's called public highways. You're allowing them through this ordinance. And so, I mean, I think it's pretty good for what you're wanting to do. Another suggestion I would put out there, again, this may be for another discussion. I know Councilman Singleton mentioned that UPS is all driving through your town already, and maybe FedEx. Part of that same bill that was passed that made golf carts legal, well, this type of thing, the 1548, a big provision was added that allows delivery companies to use golf carts for delivery services in cities. So you might want to, if you're going to go ahead and do this, you might want to add a provision in there that would track maybe state law with this and allow those companies to also use your streets for delivery, if that's something you were looking at. And then I think for just safety issues for the delivery, what the companies are going to argue, and I think why it was added into state law is that because instead of, like, if for holidays, instead of having a big UPS truck or Amazon truck drive down your street, that what they do is they'll have like a drop-off location, maybe like a storage bin or something like that, and then the golf cart would be the thing that deliver door to door. So you're not having a big truck going down at nighttime through a street. You're having one of these golf carts that has lights and all the safety equipment on it. But as far as structure, I think everything's good. The only thing I would suggest that you change would be just the definition of golf cart to match with the state, what's in the state law, and then add the 25-mile-an-hour restriction to somewhere else in the text of the ordinance, just to make sure that's a rule and not part of what makes a golf cart by definition.
Justin, is there something additional for the delivery part, apart from what's already in the proposed ordinance?
Yeah, it's more strict for them, but you'd have to affirmatively write some kind of regulation for them, another ordinance. And again, that could be could be germane to this conversation, but my thought is if you're gonna go ahead and put a new regulation in for golf carts, might as well add those two if you wanted to do that.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Chiefs don't have anything to say.
Chief Riggs, you have anything to say? Chief Bitts?
Well, I can certainly tell you, I live in a heavy populated four-wheeler golf cart community. And every day I see kids on them. So I'm glad to hear that the mayor's proposal has, licensed drivers, because out here where I live, that doesn't happen.
Many
And-
years ago, Chief, I used to also be a child that would absolutely be the idiot driving the golf cart like I shouldn't. So
Yeah.
that's why I did it.
I guess my only main concern is people veering off into major roads and heavier traffic, 17,400 parking lot or something like that. Because, people just come in and out of those parking spots. And I guess that would be my main concern for, us having to respond to somebody hurt from that.
Sure.
Yeah, my issues are with on the concerning safety also. And I don't want to be hypocritical with this because I used to ride a bicycle everywhere. It seems like if bicycles can coexist with the vehicles on our roads, then golf carts surely can too. But my experience with them comes from when my daughter lived in Town Lake, and they're all over the place in Town Lake. Every time I approached or saw one when I was driving there, I got the same feeling inside me as I did as if I'd had a bicycle rider coming out on the road. The same safety issues are involved there. But like I said, if we can allow bicycles to have part of the road, then we can do it with golf carts too. I do have a concern with the other side of 290. Fairview and Wright Road and Taylor Road have ditches on the side, and the roads are not that wide. And I realize, like on Fairview, there are businesses there that, if they're, I know NCI was over there or whatever, and they had golf carts. Not that they got on the road with them, but just in their plant and stuff. But they might want to run down the road if there was a place to eat or something and use it for that. So I think council needs to consider something there because those roads are dangerous, but then they would be for bicycles also.
Are we allowed to enforce any city ordinances over in the ETJ?
Yeah, everything you've described is in the ETJ except for Jones Road, which is prohibited by the ordinance.
Yeah.
And so they're basically underneath state law, which they can use golf carts.
Yeah.
So,
all right, forget that one.
Yeah, that's all right. But it's a great point too for when Village Center is in place over there. Being able to access Village Center somehow would be nice with the golf cart. You mentioned Town Lake. I did speak to. We would go to Town Lake all the time, and I do like the fact that they have golf carts there. They kind of built that into their community from the ground up with their own golf cart trails. Unfortunately, we don't really have that here, but we do have wide streets and lighting, and we're almost laid out and planned like a master plan community. But this ordinance would not allow sidewalk usage, trail usage, only in the event of official city business would they be allowed. So for example, if the Parks Department or Public Works got a golf cart for an event, they would be allowed to operate their golf cart for official city business with this ordinance.
And I can't really find a reason to vote for permitting over non-permitting. So
I'm gonna make one more shot at it. It's definitely uphill, but we're using a bicycle analogy. In order to ride a bicycle, you don't need insurance. There's no age requirements. There are safety suggestions, reflectors, etc., but there are no safety requirements. What we're implementing is saying, yes, you can do it, but you must follow these rules. So from an enforcement, you must have insurance. You must be 16. You must have the safety equipment. So there is a big difference between bicycles and golf carts. And my question would really go to Chief Riggs, in so much as if you pull over a golf cart and it's a 14-year-old child and they don't want to give you their name, you have a golf cart, how are you going to determine who that golf cart belongs to? It's supposed to have the safety equipment. It's supposed to have insurance. The driver's supposed to be licensed, but if you don't have the information, how are you going to handle that?
Well, Mayor Council, I'm going to go a different angle. You're talking about compliance. And I'm going to pose the question. We have all these state laws, speeding, insurance, everything you're talking about. Do they comply? Just because they're there and they have the rules and the regulations, do they comply? Most people. Okay. So I think, I mean, you're looking at something that no matter what rules you set, you know, we got rules all like Councilman Singleton said, you know, the Texas traffic code's huge. And there's a bunch of laws that aren't, you know, they don't comply. We have speeding, we have running red lights, stop signs, you know, so parking on sidewalks. So I guess, you know, that angle, that's not going to change who's going to obey the law or not. You're either going to do it or not. Just like registration. Some people don't register their vehicles. Some people don't inspect their vehicles. So putting that in place isn't going to make it something that happens. That's one of my concerns. The other concern I have, and this is just me, you're asking my opinion. You know, the master plan communities, I think there's like we have Lakes of Jersey Village, Wyndham Village, Enclave, which is gated, and any other, like, you know, like Singleton stating, you know, this law does allow for some things, but me personally, I think in those areas, it's a little safer. I go down Lake View every day almost to go home. A lot of times I'll take Jersey Village. Every time I go down there, I got to wait for cars to pass because you can park on one side of the roadway, which reduces the roadway. So I just think that if you're looking at this, I think that you may want to look at some different roadways, that we want to take a really good hard look. Is that going to be safe on those roadways? So that's just sort of the way that I'm looking at this ordinance. You know, I understand I understand that they had them where I came from. You know, they had, they were allowed to, you know, do the golf carts, you know, 2 miles from the golf course and then the gated communities. So these are some things that I've dealt with in the past, but those are my concerns.
Okay. Well, Chief, how do you identify a golf cart? How do you know who the owner is? Who do you know who's supposed to have insurance on it? Where that golf cart belongs? There's not a central registry for golf carts, although we're requiring insurance. There's no way to determine whether it's actually in place. We have no way to determine who the actual owner of that golf cart is.
Real quick. The state law did implement golf carts are required to display a golf cart license plate when operated on roads authorized by the city or county. So they, in September or in October when it went into effect, TxDOT had not, or DPS had not yet put in the process for golf cart license plates, but I have heard that now there is a process in place. So it's golf carts operated on public roads do have to have a special golf cart license plate. So just like you get pulled over in someone else's vehicle, that vehicle is tagged to a person. It has to have insurance registered to it.
Okay, well, that makes me feel better.
That raises a good question. Chief, do we have, I know HPD has the ability to, if they run a license plate, the financial responsibility information, I think, is available. Do our officers have a similar capability to check for insurance?
That comes up on all registrations now. Yes, sir. And I guess since they're putting this into effect for a golf cart, I would make the assumption that it would also show that you'd have proof of insurance. So yes, sir. Yeah. We do have that. Yes, sir.
If that's the case, that helps us to be able to enforce that aspect.
Right.
Yeah, another thing, Greg, is if just to, I don't know if the horse is dead yet, but if I have a friend from Winchester bring their golf cart over, probably illegally since you can't use trails and easements and go down Joe's Road, but if they're driving through my neighborhood and they go 26 miles an hour and they get pulled over, they're not permitted in Jersey Village, right? So it's one of those things. They should have a license plate according to state law because they're on the road, but it's just another complication. And my worry about permitting also is not just the burden on the citizens, but the burden on the city for. It's a risk reward, not a risk reward, but it's does the cost outweigh the benefits, right? I mean, who's going to do it? What's the cost? And and whatnot. At first I was for it, but with the license plate thing, I think that eases some of the burden and also identifies an owner and liability.
Yeah, if we have a means to identify the golf cart, who the owner is, liability insurance is in place, and who that belongs to, I don't have a huge problem with that. I'm kind of beating a dead horse, and I'll stop, but I was really going towards the inspection prompts an educational process. Within this ordinance, there's also a clause in there says that the owner has to sign an indemnity clause or something to the city. So how are you going to enforce that? You're gonna have to modify the ordinance to take that out.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're gonna have to register, and actually, I apologize, Andrew, I never read the one without permitting. So,
Right, without the permit, that indemnity clause is not in there.
Okay,
So
okay, never mind.
There's, and I agree with you, Greg. The reason I included one with permitting was not so much the permitting part, it was the inspection part and the education. Right. So I think that if we have the ability to write something really quick and easy for the citizens to read and put it in the water bills to make sure that everyone understands what our ordinance is, and make sure it's on our social media outlets, and even our police officers informing people of what they need to have. So if there's golf carts out there that don't have the license plate, if they're not properly registered, our officers can easily see that and say, hey, you by state law you need to have a golf cart license plate. So yeah, I think in reading more about what the state requires, and our ordinance is basically expanding and allowing citizens to use their golf carts to, instead of just going to the golf course, but also going to the pool and going to businesses and going to a park that maybe used to be too far away. But again, I think our ordinance as well adds a few items onto the minimum safety requirements for the carts beyond state law. And it also restricts usage on Jones Road, West Road, Eldridge, these streets that should not have golf cart usage on them.
What about Senate being a county road?
Senate, in my opinion, has far less traffic than Jones or West, or it's not really used to get to too many. It's not a major thoroughfare, in my opinion, and it has 2 lanes on either side with a very wide median in the middle. It's more residential than it is commercial, in my opinion.
Well, my question really was more, can we authorize the use of golf carts in this form on a county road?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Hey, regarding safety, I didn't see anything. I'm not advocating for this, but I'd like to bring up a brief topic of, I didn't see seat belts listed in there. Is that I don't think they come standard in a golf cart, and I don't know what the expense of adding.
In a golf cart.
I have seat belts on a bicycle or a moped, but you can use a helmet, but they're not required on a bicycle or a moped.
Fair enough.
In my research, there are kits you can buy to add turn signals and LED lights underneath your golf cart, and seat belts and other safety features. And to me, that would be a decision by the person who owns that golf cart, whether they want them on there or not. I think our minimum safety requirements are match what other communities have done, and where we're allowing golf cart usage, in my opinion, is the same risk as riding a bike or a moped or anything like that. So and this is just out of pure ignorance, I asked this question. Do gas-powered golf carts, would they have to go through a state emissions process at all? Or is that just, it's kind of like a lawnmower and it just kind of, I did
if
not
it belches,
see that,
it belches?
But in the ordinance as written, they do have to comply with the specific noise ordinance related to vehicles. So if they do have a gas powered, their exhaust system cannot be loud. So that's, I made sure that was in there. So
I don't believe they're required to do an emissions test.
No, I don't think they're
didn't either. I just
so one other quick question to Chief Riggs. As written, Chief, do you see any enforcement hurdles, enforcement road bumps?
As written, I mean, I don't see any road bumps. And obviously, if this does pass and we do stop someone, we'll educate them on our ordinance. But as written, I don't really see anything that would, prevent us from enforcing the new law.
And does the court system will be able to, the police officers will be able to write a citation and the court system will be able to assess a fine based on these violations, just as if it were a transportation code issue? Is that?
That would be correct. Yeah, they'll set it the same as any Class C misdemeanor, a traffic moving violation or a license, registration, license, you'd go ahead and it would fall into that category.
Okay.
Since it is, you are requiring a licensed driver to operate that, or permitted individual, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
And the ordinance contains enforcement mechanisms from section 1.8, which is pretty standard for most of our
Class D
with enforcement.
Okay, so the way that that this discussion has gone, I'm seeing most council members leaning towards the ordinance without the registration permitting process yet. Maybe something we add down the road, depending on how this experiment, as we put it, unfolds. I think that's what I've heard so far. I'm trying to think of the best way to act so we can go forward with a motion to approve the ordinance, adding I think some of the amendments that we wanted to add on to it was a rule to that no golf cart shall have the ability to exceed 25 miles per hour.
I think it was just that the golf cart shall not, when operated on public roads, exceed 25 miles per hour.
Yeah, that was Justin made that suggestion. It's just that since we're tracking the state law language, I would just adjust your definition of golf cart to match the state law. And then that's where you go ahead and bump your 25-mile-hour restriction to somewhere in the text. And that's real simple to do, but I think it helps clear up what a golf cart is that can be, regulated.
Okay. Dumb mayor question, but do we need to do that at a later date, or is this something we can incorporate into the motion?
Well, you can just say that, yeah, just as amended or as suggested with the suggested amendments, whatever they will be.
Okay, so we want to make suggested amendments to tie our golf cart definition to state law definition, and we want to add a rule, one of the rules under operation regulations, that golf carts, when driven on public streets, shall not exceed 25 miles per hour.
That's great.
Okay, and then that was what I had written down. James, I think you had a couple of issues with one of the rules that I kind of put in there, which was about no operator of golf cart shall transport a child under the age of 5 years. And I think I put this in from another city that kind of came along with it, but did you have any comments on that section?
Given the discussion, I don't know that I would change it, be able to even get a change made. I did find it interesting that we're leaving it up to the golf cart owner to decide whether or not they put seatbelts in. But we're telling the golf cart owner they're not allowed to have anyone under the age of 5. I would prefer we leave that to the parent. Leave that to the golf cart owner. There are children under 5 who can sit in a golf cart properly without falling off, without sitting on mom's lap. And there are children who are 14 that can't do either one of those things. So I think that should be just left up to the parent to decide that. And if the parent is trusting their child to be with someone else who's in that golf cart, they've made that decision. So I would strike item L completely and leave that in line with trusting the golf cart owner to make the right decision.
And to your point, there is in the ordinance, every person who's in that golf cart has to be seated And the ordinance also states that you know, if you have a four-seat golf cart, you can't have 5, 6, 7 people on it. You have to have the amount of people on the golf cart that's rated for. You can't transport people. You know, we go to my father-in-law's ranch and we have a golf cart, and sometimes the kids will hang off like off the side and that kind of thing. That's not allowed in our ordinance. So yeah, I see your point as far as, you know, there are 3 and 4-year-olds who can sit in a seat and behave, and then there are some 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds who can't. So it's a little arbitrary with that rule. Is there anybody else who would be okay with taking that?
Well, a point of discussion is that most children in a vehicle are required to be in a car seat under certain parameters. Again, you guys want to equate this to a bicycle, which I think is a wrong analogy. This isn't a bicycle. These are closer to motor vehicles, and they operate along the same lines. And to remove all safety standards for children, I think, is irresponsible. So I think you know, if you're going to move to eliminate the 5-year-old, then I would move to implement car seats, as ridiculous as that might sound. I think there needs to be some safety standards in place. I think we're getting away from that. And I think that's the wrong way.
I would leave the requirement in there because, I mean, I think that even with seatbelts and all of that, when you start to get under the age of 5, I think it becomes much more difficult in a vehicle that's typically that wide open. You know, absent some additional, like Greg mentioned, like a car seat. Like I think a lot of kids, I mean, not all, but I mean, a lot of kids that are smaller, you know, if they're riding along on a bicycle, they're in a basically like a car seat. It's one of those giant bicycle seats where they're strapped in like they're going up on a SpaceX rocket. So I think that for something like this, I would agree with leaving that restriction in. Yeah. You know, I think it's a little bit that's a little easier to enforce, and I think it's, you know, it just kind of recognizes the nature of the mode of transport.
And I think that's why with the discussion with the mayor back and forth was that there really isn't a good way to write this. You have to draw the line somewhere, because I really don't want to see a 2-year-old riding one of these. I still think up to the parent, but at the same time, man, I really don't want to see a 2-year-old riding one of these. So you've got to draw the line somewhere. Where you draw that line can go in a lot of different ways. 5 years old happens to be car seat age. So that's probably where they came up with this. And I've even mentioned to Andrew in my emails that it's probably not worth something that we mess with.
Okay.
The other thing that I think we need to change, item F, 3 Eldridge Road does not exist in our city. It's North Eldridge Parkway.
Gosh, who wrote that?
Out of curiosity, is there any part of North Eldridge Parkway that is below 35 miles per hour? I guess there is.
No.
Oh, well, I mean,
it's all 40. It's all 40 miles an hour, but you could argue that you're driving on Eldridge when you cross Eldridge. And so Andrew had a very good point of leaving it in the ordinance. So you could cross Eldridge if for some reason that was going to happen. Really don't see one. I really don't see people driving across Jones much other than people in the apartments possibly coming this direction. But most apartment owners don't have golf carts. Right. So
James, I was going to take mine to go to Sam's or the park and ride.
And you can do that.
And you can, yeah. The ordinance allows
you
you
really
to take
can.
Absolutely.
So
I'll take it too far in the weeds, but legally is if you are driving, like if I'm driving down Lakeview and I cross Senate, have I briefly left Lakeview, entered Senate, and then re-entered Lakeview? I think the way the transportation code reads, you are continuing on Lakeview the entire time.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't even know if this is really legally necessary.
It didn't hurt to leave it there, was my thought.
Except for the imaginary road.
Yeah, and make sure that it's got the right name.
Yeah, North Eldridge Park.
Okay. Any other questions, comment? Go ahead, Drew.
Yeah, I just a couple things, because Bobby brought up something and then I brought up something that triggered it. Park and ride, parking. You know, I think each business and you know, entity is responsible for what's on their private property. But a question how are we handling golf parking at city? Would they park in a parking space? Would they be allowed to park in other, where? It sounds like there's a common sense answer, but no parking for cars. I mean, I don't know if there's necessarily a difference.
Great question. Yeah.
And I don't think it's hard to answer. Yeah, you're allowed to park in a parking spot, and that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, just as a business owner myself, I think I would personally change or just allow people to park in a parking space, because they were either going to take a car and take up that parking space, or they were going to ride a golf cart. So to me, it's not losing anything, but it brings up a good point for city events. At like Clark Henry Park or going to the pool, the city may want to think about creating special parking spots that would allow more golf carts to fit in a parking lot. Just throwing it out there. It's not something we have to conquer tonight, but I think as far as private businesses go, they can make their own decision on do they allow golf carts to take up a parking space. And also, I know that zoning, there's a lot of requirements for the number of parking spaces required for different establishments based on their occupancy and that kind of thing. But it may be something down the road we think about changing some of these things to encourage golf cart usage in certain parts of the city, and maybe in certain parks and the golf course and that kind of thing. But that's a good point to bring up. I don't think it needs to be accomplished tonight, but that's definitely something we want to think about as part of this self-described experiment. And maybe something that we also want to just put on the calendar a year from now to bring back up and just look at it again. But I think personally, I think this ordinance will, if it's passed, and we educate our citizens to know what the rules are, and they go through the registration process with the state, and we can see what the challenges are, as Chief Riggs mentioned. Do we restrict usage on the busier streets like Lakeview in Jersey that have traffic issues? Maybe not all day, but at certain times of the day, those types of things. But again, ordinances are not written in stone. They can be changed down the road once we see how this ordinance impacts our city. But I think our citizens, once this was kind of released on social media, definitely saw it as an advantage to have access to using these on our streets. With that said, is there any more discussion, any more ideas?
Yeah, I want to make one more appeal to drop that restriction, that age limit restriction. I just don't see that that's enforceable. I don't go with creating laws or ordinance that aren't enforceable. I mean, how's the police officer going to know what that child's age is?
I think the idea behind making it 5 is not that I don't think the issue is the 4.5-year-old. I think the issue is the 2-year-old, the 1-year-old. And I think most officers are probably going to be able to identify somebody who is well below 5. If somebody's close to 5, that may be a different story, but I think that we're creating that buffer just to give them some wiggle room.
So Bobby, maybe, and this might be even less wiggle or more or less wiggle room. Should we go by what the state law is for a car seat?
That's what it is. But how does a police officer enforce that rule? How does he know
the size, weight, and all that? Yeah, I don't know. That's why I was wondering if it's
conducts interviews. He conducts interviews. Who's met a 3-year-old that didn't tell you, I'm 3? It's interviews.
3.5. 3.5.
But yeah, I think a car seat's probably not practical, because although there are seats and bicycles are designed to be able to accommodate those seats, I don't know that there's an equivalent for a golf cart.
No, Bobby, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we add a car seat to the golf cart. My question was, there are rules, and James, you're right. 5, I think, is the age, but there's also a size regulation.
We're tying the definition of a golf cart to state law. Should we tie the age restriction to what car seat age restrictions are.
Or size, right? Is where I was
Car
going.
seats in the vehicles aren't really enforceable either unless somebody gets in an accident.
Yeah.
Then you're able to determine whether somebody violated the law or not.
That's not true.
That's not true.
I think it's easier to leave the ordinance written as is with the 5-year-old restriction, simply because, yeah, that's the age of car seat usage, and I think it's easier to enforce, in my opinion, when it's just clearly written 5 years old, not tied to anything else. I just think as ease of enforcement, it would be, like James said, if the officer asks the question and the child answers with what they're going to answer, then But I think it's just easier to have it in the ordinance as 5 years old, to just provide, as Bobby mentioned earlier, it's a good to have you have to draw a line somewhere, and whether that's 4, 3, 5, I think 5 is the safest because it's tied to something resembling state law, and I pulled this. I think this one came from Seabrook. And so obviously they saw a need to put it in somewhere. And I think we should probably err on the side of caution with that. So
just one other thing,
Andrew.
And this is, sorry, it's a delay because I don't know, this is a major cultural change for our city. I mean, James said UPS is using it, and you could do it to the golf course. I've not seen a lot of golf carts in use around town. Is this something we want to consider more time than a week to get more citizen feedback from? I should have asked this at the very beginning. I'm not necessarily, I think we've heard from those who are intrigued by this, but just putting it out there.
My personal opinion is, we put our agenda out ahead of the minimum requirements for the state. This was out on Facebook. It was out on Nextdoor. It received a lot of comments. I received a few emails from people with their concerns, and a lot of the concerns that were out there. To me, it seemed a little obvious that people hadn't even read the draft ordinance, because they were asking a lot of questions about this and that, when it's clearly defined in the ordinance. Yes, you have to have this. Yes, you have to have that. So personally, I feel like when we put our agenda out there, and I've said this in my newsletters before, we put our agenda out there at least 72 hours in advance. Lori does a really good job of putting it out even further out ahead of that requirement. It's really easy to just go through the agenda bullet point by bullet point, find something. Like Mark Malloy does a really good job of going through the agenda and seeing what he wants to talk about, and people send emails, people make public comments. I think we give plenty of opportunity for people to look at us, and in 2020, it's easier than ever for you to be as informed as humanly possible about our city. You can call, you can email us, you get the agendas through email blast, you can get it through our social media, you can get it straight from the website. There's multiple ways of getting it. And then most of the time, whatever the hot topic in that agenda becomes an item on social media that people chat about. And it's easy for people like us to read that and get the feedback that way. So long story short, I feel like there's plenty of notice went out. I think we received valuable feedback from citizens on the topic. I received phone calls, emails, messages on Facebook about it, almost universal support. So that's my opinion would be, I think we had a great discussion about this. I think the city attorney has chimed in on some great things to add to it. Some things that we need to think about down the road once this ordinance is passed, if it goes into effect, what we need to keep our eyes on from our public safety standpoint. So that's my opinion. All right, with that,
Got a motion.
Andrew, if you would indulge me for a second, I'd like to make a motion, and I know what's going to happen, but I'd like to do it anyways. I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 2020-15 with registration and then further defining golf carts more closely to the state regulation, the state definition, and to put a rule that golf carts shall not exceed 25 miles per hour.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Motion fails for lack of a second.
Mayor, I move to approve ordinance number 2020-15 without permitting, with the definition of golf cart modified to match that contained in Texas Transportation Code Chapter 551, but also including a prohibition against operation of a golf cart on city streets at a speed exceeding 25 miles per hour.
Do we want to add something for item F to read North Eldridge Parkway?
And yes, and I modify my motion to include changing subpoint F, subpart 3 to read North Eldridge Road.
Parkway.
Parkway.
North Eldridge.
North Eldridge Parkway. I missed that there were multiple parts wrong with that subpart.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Gary has seconded. All right. Any more discussion on the topic? Seeing none, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Warren, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Holden, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Singleton, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wilbenhorst, state your vote.
Aye.
Councilmember Wasson, state your vote.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I'm sorry, did everybody say aye there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations, Andrew. You got
I
one.
get one ordinance passed tonight.
After another lengthy discussion.
And Greg didn't get a second.
I never bring up the easy
That's
topics.
by design.
Yeah. All right. So that brings us to mayor and council comments. I'm going to go ahead and start with Councilmember Wasson.
This mute button is the bane of my existence. Hey, so quickly, we're now in hurricane season. It's a quick reminder for everyone to prepare. We had Cristobal, which the city was right on top of last week, or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was. And reminds me of a quote by Eisenhower. It's constantly attributed to him that in emergency, plans are worthless, but planning is indispensable. This city and its staff are fantastic at planning and being prepared and double checking and making sure risk mitigation is one of our strongest suits. And I want to commend Austin, the department lead, staff on that. Tonight we added a person to the comprehensive plan committee. There's tons of ways to get involved in this city, in the way the city government functions, but also in the city itself. And I encourage users, residents to participate in city events, come out. We're a great community and participation makes that stronger. So we have a 4th of July parade coming up. Mark your calendars on the 4th of July. Public schools and senior outreach need help. And finally, on participation, we have ordinances that come up every month and things like that, but the city operates on a budget and we're about to go into budget season. We've already had discussions in May and we're coming up in July. I think, the May workshops posted and I think the minutes will be up soon if they're not already. And when the agenda comes up in July for what the 2021 fiscal year 21 proposal are, that's how our city is going to operate, the constraints and the expected revenue. And it's important that citizens understand that. And so when they, how come we have these overflows? It's not an overflow. It's not necessarily by design. It's because we have a very conservative fiscal culture in our city government. And I love it. And they're very good stewards of the tax dollars. But for more information, participate in those discussions, if nothing else, by reading the budgets, reading the proposals, and asking your council members or city staff about them.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Wilbenhorst.
For the sake of brevity, I'm not going to have any comments.
All right. Councilmember Singleton.
I would echo July 4th is coming up with the July 4th parade. There's not a event at Clark Henry this year, so come on out to Jersey Drive or get a vehicle put into the parade. We would love to have you. I also want to say thank you to the staff at the police department and fire departments for their service over the past few months, and to all the city staff as policies are changing back and forth. And it's just frustrating to keep track of during recent events. Thank you for your professional service to the community and your empathy and loyalty to the citizens of Jersey Village.
Thank you, James. Councilmember Warren.
Well, first, I will say, James, that is well said, and I would echo that. And also, as Drew mentioned, we do have budget season coming up. I would wait until the next meeting, but we would literally begin the budget meeting right after that next regular meeting. So July 21st, or I'm sorry, July 20th and July 21st, hopefully not also July 22nd, but if we're as windy as we are tonight, it could go that long. But yes, please do participate in that process. That is the most important thing that we do as a city council, which is set a budget. So it's extremely important to keep tabs on that. And I would also say that if you are interested in how your money is being spent, I know this has been in place for a while, but you can go to the city website at jerseyvillagetx.com, and every single week that checkbook is updated, showing where every single cent that this city spends goes. So if you have any questions, I would encourage you to go to the website, take a look at the financial transparency page. It's tremendous. It's come a long way in the last 3 or so years since it came from basically, a little bit of information to a tremendous amount of information. In addition, I also want to encourage folks, if you are still watching this live stream, you are just the kind of person we need who is that interested in government to join our Charter Review Commission. That is an extraordinarily important process that happens every 4 years. Our charter requires citizens to go through and look at what is essentially our constitution for the city to determine whether or not it's still working to meet the needs of the citizens and whether there should be some proposals put forward for a vote to change that charter. I believe we need 7 regular members and 3 alternates. So it's a pretty big commission, if I got that right. But in any case, the important thing is not how big it is that that commission needs you out there listening right now to go and submit an application and to participate in a process that's important for our city's future.
Thank you, Bobby. Greg, you have anything for us?
Yeah, several. On Tuesday after a Monday meeting several months ago, I received a rubber chicken on my front porch as a memento of a discussion. So I've adopted that chicken. I've named him Rooster, and I'm using him as an emotional support chicken. I will be bringing him to the meetings.
Good.
For the rest of the year, and I look forward to you guys interacting with him.
Good. I thought you needed an emotional support chicken after that discussion.
A bad way to finish out the last year.
My dog enjoyed the chicken, Andrew.
Oh, you're welcome, guys.
So that's all I have.
Thank you, Greg. I just wanted to say, Drew, thank you very much for the blessing at the beginning of the meeting. That was very, very, very well read, and a lot of wisdom in there. With everything going on right now in our country, civic engagement is more important than ever. And I echo everyone's comments of government is not a spectator sport. You need to participate however you can. It doesn't have to mean serving on a board, but we really need people to apply to serve on various boards to make sure that our city is moving in the right direction. I want to thank our police department. I did receive a lot of emails with everything going on in our country, asking our questions about our police department. And I, as a mayor, and this has been for years with everything going on, but I've always been impressed by the professionalism of our police department. De-escalation is extremely important, not just with a race issue, but it's also for a mental health issue. I know there's a lot of people in our city who have kids or adults with mental health issues or some sort of mental handicap that A lot of misunderstandings can happen, and tragedies have been known to happen because they can't communicate properly. And I've actually heard from some of those parents who have told me that specifically Jersey Village police officers have reached out to them and help them understand how their child can identify themselves properly. And it was just great to hear that our police officers didn't just go through a PowerPoint presentation, but they're actually out in the community asking the questions of our parents and asking the questions of our citizens of what does policing mean to you and our city. So you guys have done a fantastic job, and I want you just keep it up.
Thank you,
What
Mayor.
else? Budget workshops coming up next month. It's kind of the biggest thing that we do. We do chat a lot about different things here, but the biggest function of our city government, our city council, is going through the budget process, making sure that we're satisfying our core values, and then also looking at projects that we can accomplish this year. I'm very encouraged by, even though there's a pandemic going on and officially now recession, that we still are looking very healthy financially. And that again goes to many years, past councils, current councils, and hopefully future councils that are fiscally wise and get the best value for our taxpayer dollars. So let's keep that tradition going. I'm sure that'll continue that way for my last and final budget workshop. So yeah, great discussion tonight, and I'll go ahead and end the meeting. Meeting adjourned.